30% of the world's supply of precious metals is coming from recycling. They're basically in every material we use in life, national defense and for the economy. We cannot stop the recycling of these essential elements.
Becky Berube, founder and president of United Catalyst Corporation, is a seasoned expert in the precious metal recycling industry who possesses the skills and knowledge required to thrive in this constantly evolving landscape.
The one thing I've learned in 31 years is it's always too soon to quit. You have to stay the course. You have to stay in the game.
In this podcast, she provides insights into the industry's trajectory for the near future, while also addressing the current challenges involved with the infancy stage of battery recycling.
I think one of the hardest things is battery chemistries. How do we send them all in and only get a credit for the ones that have the nickel and the lithium?
I'm your host, Ed Schwenk, and welcome to another episode of Noble Six Talks.
Well, hello, Becky.
Hi, Rich.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So today we have the pleasure of speaking with Becky Berube of United Catalyst Corporation, or known as UCC.
That's correct.
Now, we're here at the 47th Annual IPMI Conference, and you were a past IPMI president, correct?
That is correct.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? How did that come about?
I think they nominate you to serve on the board of directors, and somehow, if you're a good volunteer, they say, I bet you.
They said, we watch you.
They'll put you in that little daisy chain, and, I think I was probably the worst IPMI secretary that they've ever seen. My meeting notes never went out on time, but that's okay. They were gracious, and no, I did. I had the privilege of serving during COVID, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that
It was a
had to be
precarious
surreal.
time for the IPMI where we couldn't meet, and they were difficult times. But what a committed group of executive directors and the executive committee, Larry and Sandra. And then all the membership. You guys are patrons, you guys are sponsors. It's what really got us through a very difficult time for the IPMI.
Yeah.
Without conference, without revenue.
It was a very strange time for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, nonprofits, that get most of their revenue from meeting in person, were really, struggling.
Yeah,
Right.
devastating.
And other industries try to do like Zoom conferences
Yes.
or, that kind of stuff. But
We
that
did.
doesn't work.
We did one, I think, but yeah, it was
Yeah.
very difficult.
Yeah. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of behind the scenes that go on at the IPMI. Can you
That's
maybe
true.
touch a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, as an organization, just a couple years ago, we split out the organization into two entities, legal entities. So we always had the IPMI Scientific and Educational Foundation. So we did that. We became, we realized that we were doing a lot of trade, a lot of networking, a lot of connecting, and we knew that was more of a trade organization. So we became a C6. And then we left the IPMI, the C3, and that became an educational and scientific foundation, which really calls to our roots of how the IPMI was begun by some professors and academicians, and that's how, but it quickly became, as you all know, a place to connect, build relationships. So we had a rebranding, we connecting you to the world of precious metals, new logos, all that sort of thing. And that sort of happened during my time on the board and into the service of the officership.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned networking. It's such a great place to come and be able to see all the different professionals in our industry.
Yes.
And even though technically we're in the same sector and,
Yeah.
you could say we're competitors,
Sure.
but we have open relationships.
Absolutely.
That's what I like about coming to the IPMI conferences.
Yeah, we started the company, and I know you'll get to that, I'm sure, but we were 24 years old and probably came to IPMI just maybe 2 years after we founded the company, and it was a very different atmosphere 30 years ago. It really was. And this is such an open, inviting atmosphere where people are doing great business together. They're finding synergies. It's friendly competitors. It's obviously competition, but there's not one person that we don't compete against that I don't think I could call up and say, what do you think about this?
Right.
And I think the IPMI PACT organization, the Prevention of Auto Catalyst Theft, is a good example of that, right?
I agree.
You've got
Absolutely.
80 or 90 member firms working together to prevent automotive catalyst theft. It's great.
Yeah, it is great.
And we're not all the same. We don't all have the same business model. We're all different.
And that's a very difficult subject to tackle
Sure.
with a group as diverse as as ours
Yep.
because we have so many different interests besides catalytic converter recycling in the
Right.
IPMI, right? So
Sure.
many industries are represented. Finers, smelters, banks,
Processors, right,
Processors.
exactly. Collectors.
collectors, all
Yep.
of that.
That's true.
From the bottom, if you will, to the top.
Yeah. The
So
whole
we all
supply
come
chain is
together as a group.
represented. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really
So that was an ad hoc committee. So the way the IPMI, it has some standing committees, it has chapters, and then this is kind of an ad hoc committee, which means it's coming together for a purpose, and it may or may not, be there
Continue.
for forever. Yeah, and it really advises the exco and the board on this particular subject. And now we have a lobbying part of that. So we're paying a lobbyist to represent our interests, and we've come up with 6 common principles that we kind of all ascribe to as member companies,
Yeah.
which is not easy to do.
No, it's not.
It's like
It's been a
herding
process.
cats. Dun, dun, dun.
It's been a
Yeah.
process, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has.
I look
to
at
be.
some of the
You're involved
surveys.
in that. So, I mean,
Yes.
and we
You are
kind of
as well.
sit into some
Yeah.
of those
Well, I look at
meetings,
some of the
so-
surveys and the questions, and then they ask for comments, and you have to really think it through
Sure.
to come up with a perspective
Yeah.
to share.
Yeah.
And then you've got all these responses that come in.
Yeah, that is a working group. That is some great member companies that have kind of formed an inner working group that have been sending out those surveys. They've been meeting weekly since May of 2022. They've been meeting with other industry organizations, and a lot of hard work that they've been putting in. I mean, almost twice a week. Once a week, they meet on Tuesdays as a working group, and then on Thursdays they meet with other industry associations. So it's a big commitment from those member companies to allow their colleagues and their employees to participate that way.
Tell us about your company.
Sure. So we founded United Catalyst Corporation. Like I said, we were 24 years old.
Yeah.
It is not what we thought we'd do with our lives, but I was a I was a portfolio accountant for Putnam Investments in Boston, and Tim was going to be an architect. So Tim is my husband and co-founder of United Catalyst Corporation. So
He's a great guy.
thank you. I think so too. I like him.
So how did you guys get into this industry then?
So I was already working. We were newlyweds, and Tim was still completing his architecture program. And he worked for his dad, but it was a recession. And Dad had to lay him off, but he said, "But don't worry, I found you this great job in Boston. You're going to drive around the country and pick up scrap catalytic converters for this company."
How interesting.
And so while he was finishing his degree, he did that during the days. And so they loved him. He was top driver. But that company got bought and sold several times, and then decided to close its Chelsea or Boston warehouse. And they said, "No problem. You just keep going around New England, and then just go down to Pittsburgh every Saturday." And Tim said, "I'm a newlywed. I'm away all week long on the road. I don't think I want to take Saturdays also and go to
Right.
Pittsburgh, so I don't think I'll do that." And they said, "Oh, no problem. Just sign this little paper. It's called a non-compete." And he said, "I don't even know who you are. I mean, this company has changed hands 6 times. I don't think I'll sign that." And so that's how our company
Well,
was
that was
born.
smart.
So we continued to serve the people that we served, and the company grew. And we went from a small place in Massachusetts to Providence, Rhode Island. And then in 2002, we opened a second location in Greenville, in South Carolina. And we've been there 20 years.
Some of the products and services you offer?
We are kind of the big proponents of assay-based selling, and I think you are as well. So everything we do is on recovery. And we do auto catalyst, we do ceramic metallics, we do shredding of ECUs. So kind of anything precious and automotive, that's kind of what interests us. Very similar to yourselves.
Yeah. That's a big industry, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of material in the marketplace. This year's a kind of a challenge for all of us. I know that the sellers are experiencing depressed pricing and shock.
They don't like it, do they?
They don't like it.
The hoarders.
Right?
But, I guess my perspective is if you want to hold and wait for a higher price, you may be disappointed further.
Yes. Tim always tells our staff to just explain to recyclers it can always get worse, and it most likely will, especially with recessionary vibes that we feel. I mean, I think we just heard this week that both the Fed and Bloomberg have a 65 to 68% assurance that we are heading into recession in the next 12 months, right? And so whether that will be shallow and short-lived or deep and wide, yet remains to be seen with interest rates and inflation, but we'll see.
Well, we've seen bear markets before in this business.
Yep.
I practiced in the gold refining business for a lot of years, and I heard I forget who it was that said it yesterday at one of the sessions. He entered the space, the beginning of his career, at the beginning of a 20-year bear market in gold.
Yeah.
And I thought, I remember that. That was excruciating.
Yep.
It was very hard. I think we're going to see bear market in PGMs,
Sure.
just my opinion. I think that there's too much palladium and not enough demand, and we're going to see, we saw rhodium trading in the $2,500 to $3,500 range for years and years and years.
Yep.
So these prices aren't so bad, are they?
They're not terrible. And I mean, the spikes have only been in 16 years apart for rhodium, 3 or 4 year, spikes. And I think Wilma's chart maybe showed from Metals Focus, maybe showed that the average price for palladium has never been much over $1,000, except for the past 3 years. So, I mean, these are good prices, right?
They are.
We're trying to explain to recyclers that they're not worth nothing, right? Just because you maybe lost 50% of the value, they're still not back down to $50, $60 a unit. But you're right, Ed. I think we're heading into that structural surplus that all the analysts are showing us, and the downward trend, at least for palladium and rhodium,
Right.
in price.
What are you hearing on your side of the country as far as the velocity of catalytic converter theft and reporting, and the pain that's out there with that type of criminal activity that really paints us all with in a bad light?
Yeah, we've been fortunate to serve both with the IPMI Pact, but before that, we've been sitting on the ISRI Materials Theft Committee and on the ARA Government Committee, some of those things. And we work a lot with law enforcement. But when you go up to certain shows, they're like, oh, you're those people. And we're like, no, actually we don't buy a single converter. We just recycle them on recovery, so we're not taking in the door business. So in that way, we feel a little bit different than some other companies, but they do want to paint us all with that brush. But I think what the thing I always want people to understand is the recovery of this above ground mining supply. Now almost 30% of the world supply of precious metals is coming from recycling, right?
That's a big number.
Yes, you cannot look at the theft and throw all of these natural resources, which are essential for national defense and for the economy, right? They're basically in every material we use in life.
Yep.
And you cannot landfill that. You cannot stop and this is the importance of with Congress to understand that we cannot stop the recycling of these essential,
Elements.
elements. Absolutely.
Agreed.
Hence Noble 6, right?
You get it.
It's so funny when we rebranded as Noble 6. People in the industry that are well seasoned, they understood it immediately.
Sure. It's good. It's a good name, and I like it.
We've had fun with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Although this business is a challenging business, I can't say it's a fun year. We've had funner years.
Sure.
Is that a
Oh,
word?
yeah.
Is funner a word?
More
It is
fun.
today.
It was, yeah.
On this podcast, it's a word.
It's a word.
It-
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've had more fun in the past.
Yeah.
It's always fun when it's a rising market, right?
Sure.
Because at the end of the year, you look back and you say, "Oh, we had a great year."
Yeah, we loved COVID, right?
Right.
But you try explaining to your banks and those things that year that rhodium hit 30,000. That's an anomaly, right? That hasn't happened for, like I said, 16 years.
But that
since it went
trading
up.
arm knows that.
Yeah,
but
but,
that's not who we're dealing with, right?
Right. So, but the one thing I've learned in 31 years is it's always too soon to quit, right? You have to stay the course. You have to stay in the game and make yourself relevant. Right. You have to provide, excellent customer service. You have to continue to serve the people that you serve, and that's all you can do.
Relationships.
Very relational business and a very long sales cycle.
It is a very long sales cycle.
Yeah, compared to other more transactional businesses, I think we have a very relational business.
Right. Right. Where do you see our industry going in the next few years with the market dynamics, with coming legislation?
Yeah.
Things are going to change.
They are changing, and we can kind of, for those of us who've been doing it for a long time, or we've been in precious metals a long time, we do see the cyclicality of it. We know that, it'll change, and it'll probably go higher in some ways, but we do see that surplus, that looming, surplus coming for the first time, a structural surplus in palladium and rhodium. But I think the market, we're going to continue to see consolidation in recycling companies. That's going to change the game a little bit. Prices will go lower. That will change things.
You think we'll see fewer processors in the market? Or I should say aggregators? Aggregators is really...
Yeah, I think there's already...
where I'm leaning here with the question.
I mean, I think we're already seeing that with Elemental and some other... In recycling of automotive recycling, we're seeing private equity enter. We're seeing those companies sort of arrange around private equity groups and different things. So, yeah, I think we're seeing a changing landscape, but I think we'll still be here till the time the three of us retire.
Right.
I don't think the business is going anywhere. I just think it's going to change. And
I think the business is going to change based on the mix of the fuel train, or battery electrics, hybrids,
yeah.
ICE engines. We're going to see different penetration rates for battery electrics coming in. Do you think recyclers are should really push themselves to diversify into some of these new material types that are coming on?
I think we'd love to see that. I mean, they're looking for solutions, right? And we're going to be successful if we provide solutions to their problems. But they're looking for economically viable solutions.
Right.
I think one of the hardest things is battery chemistries. I worked a small time in my career for Umicore, and they have Umicore battery recycling. And, they've been doing that for 14 years. But the general public, the recyclers, know that there's different chemistries, right? There's lithium-ion nickel metal hydrides. But what's hard to wrap their mind around is how do we send them all in and only get a credit for the ones that have the nickel and the lithium, right, and the cobalt or whatever.
And then have to be told
And then
to pay out.
To pay out, right? So you've got debits and credits, and there's a lot of things that you have to pay to have recycled,
Right.
and not a lot of credits. And understanding the chemistries, it's just such an infantile, and you see all the CapEx, right, going into battery recycling.
Right.
We're in South Carolina. We're in Greenville, South Carolina. It's quickly becoming the battery belt. Lots of activity, redwoods coming in, just all of them, looking at lithium ion, all that. Even Aruba is putting the copper smelter right outside of Augusta. So there's a lot of activity there, but you see these billion-dollar grants and these billion-dollar investments, and it's just like, where is all that battery material going to come from? And it's in its infancy, right? It's almost like catalytic converters were 31 years ago when we were buying them for 5, 10, and 15, right? Mm-hmm. And the only game in town was A1.
Right.
Or maybe Tecamet if you knew that they existed.
If you knew them, yes.
Yeah. If you're in that part of the country, but A1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a tough environment.
Yeah. They're looking for, what can you help me move this commodity and I get paid for it. And that just hasn't been determined yet, what the commercial model is for battery recycling. I mean, some people are moving batteries, but yeah.
Yeah.
So encouraging the recyclers. I mean, we do a session at ARA, always on the future of mobility. We talk about hydrogen, we talk about batteries, and that's great. But they're still looking at us like, okay, tell us how we're going to make money with that.
Right.
Like, where should we send these? And then you get into, who is the responsible parties to work with. And I never want to lead a recycler astray, right? I don't want to put them into a bad trading relationship. You've got to really vet. We're talking a lot about responsible sourcing. We're talking a lot about anti-money laundering and know your customer, right? Protocols. Right. And I don't want to lead any recycler to do business with a company that's going to have a clawback on them for, that company's going to get in trouble and it's going to cost them money because they did business with them. Just if you think back to the Superfund sites and the Cometco, I mean, people still get. That dealt with Cometco, I think that was their name. They're still getting lawyer letters, like 30 years later.
That's a long time, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to be aware of who you do business with. I think that's becoming more important.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Do you have any words of encouragement for someone out there that is possibly considering joining IPMI?
Sure.
How would they benefit? What would you say?
Goodness, if you're going to do anything with precious metals, you have to be a member of the International Precious Metals Institute. I mean, it is where the world of precious metals really does connect. And you come to a conference like this, and yes, it might be an expenditure. It could be, a burden to a young, growing company. But I've met so many successful stories out here, iridium producers, just people, who have just come with a technology or they've come with a startup. I mean, if you want to do good business and you want to grow your company, everyone's right here.
Yeah, the networking opportunities are
None right here.
yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
Because everybody's here in this industry.
So that's our
Precious
funny
metals
story.
industry.
Our funny story is how we came to the IPMI, and I don't mind telling you.
Yeah.
But here it's going to go out to the whole world. But when we started, there was really only, like I said, one place to sell your catalytic converters if you were a collector. And so that was A1 Specialized. And God bless them, I call it the indentured servitude program. They told you what they were going to pay, and you took the price.
Right.
There was no negotiating.
Okay.
This is what it is.
This is
Take
it.
it or
You
leave
take
it.
it or leave it. Yeah. And so, but I remember we were visiting them, and Tim reminded me it was when they were in New Jersey. And I just remember seeing this huge wall calendar that said the International Precious Metals Institute. And so as I went to the ladies' room, I made sure that, there was no internet, there was no cell phones,
Right.
I don't think in the early 90s at the time. And so I had to write down that phone number.
Oh, yeah.
And I got home and I called, and they said, I called the main office in Florida, and they said, it's wonderful, we're going to have our annual conference in June, it's coming up, and it's going to be in Newport, Rhode Island. And I was like, we're in Massachusetts, we can go to this.
That's
It's
beautiful.
fantastic. Until I got there, and A1 said, what are you doing here?
Really?
And I said, well, I came to learn and grow. I'm going to, you need to go on the spouse tour. You don't need to be in these meetings. And so it's kind of a joke, and it's okay to tell it now. But every meeting we had, the bushes were kind of moving in the lobby, and I was getting a little silent, like, you don't belong here. You just need to. But it was just the old days, and
Yeah.
it was a very
It was
different.
a closed network.
It was a very close network, yeah. And Auto Catalyst, it's kind of funny for us to sit here and we have a whole
With a mature
committee, yeah, and we have all these companies that do Auto Catalyst. But when we started in those early 90s, there wasn't a lot of Auto Catalysts being collected except for a couple players. And so a lot of the refiners, that was too low grade for them to even consider. They were like, we do high grade scrap, we do jewelry, we do doré, we do, mine tailings, all these things. And they were like, oh, you do Auto Catalyst.
They frowned upon it, huh?
They're like, really low grade. We'd say, yeah. But I think what people discredited was that there would be the sheer volumes.
Uh-huh.
Now, 10 million cars, 11 million cars a year coming
It's
off
up
the
and coming.
road. I don't think they counted on what a low grade scrap with high volumes could amount to in terms of now 30% of the world's, supply of precious metals.
Yeah.
Flip the switch on that.
Very, very.
I mean, I know it's 25, 70, or 80, 20, but I think they say it's growing to almost 30% of the world's supply for recyclables, and the largest
That's a big
sector of that
number.
being automotive catalyst. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Becky, I want to thank you for making time for us today.
Yes, thank you so much. See, it wasn't that bad, was it?
No, it was great.
You did
Thanks for
great.
having me. It's a privilege. Thanks.